Okay, long division. So, given that f of 1 equals 0, so that means there are no remainders. So it's going to go into it evenly. What are all the factors? So you got to find all of them. So here's the polynomial. It is x cubed plus 7x squared plus 7x minus 15. And if you're plugging 1 into each of the x's to figure out what the remainder is, that means you are dividing by x minus 1. So I'm going to divide this by x minus 1. If you divide this by x minus 1, that is one of the factors. So x minus 1 is one of them. Could be that, could be that, could be that. So I know right off the bat it's not b, because x minus 1 has to be one of the factors. So x times what is going to give you x cubed, and that is x squared. Now you times x squared to x, and that's x cubed, and you times x squared to a minus 1, and that's a minus x squared. Okay, now the most important part, you got to subtract them. So change that to a minus, and that is a minus, change it to a plus. So if you add these up, that will be 8 squares. Bring down the next piece, 7x. Okay, what can you times x by to turn it into 8x squared? And that is 8x. So if I times 8x to x, that is 8x squared. If I times 8x to a minus 1, that's a minus 8x. Now you gotta subtract them. Change that to a minus, change that to a plus. And that's 15 x's. Bring down a minus 15. And times x by 15. So I'm going to times it by 15. 15 times x is 15x. 15 times a minus 1 is a minus 15. Now change the signs. Change that to minus, change that to plus, and there are no remainders. So your factors are this. Your factors are x minus 1 times this. X squared plus 8x plus 15. And this can be broken down into two more factors. So your final answer should be x minus 1. And if you factor this, what times is to give you x squared? That's x and x. Then what times is to give you 15? But adds and gives you 8. So it's got to be x plus 3, x plus 5. Because 3 times 5 gives you 15, 3 plus 5 gives you 8. So that is D. The answer is D. These are all 3 of the factors. Okay, function notation. So evaluate each function. So this guy, function is f. And they want you to evaluate f at this. So let's do 3 first, because 3 is a little bit easier. So they want you to evaluate g at a negative 4. So all that means is you're going to take negative 4 and you're going to substitute it into g everywhere there is an x. So you take the x out and you put negative 4 in its place. So this can be g instead of the x, negative 4 equals, now where the x's are, put parentheses. So do parentheses, negative 4, parentheses, cubed, plus, where the x is, put parentheses, negative 4 squared. Okay, now, if you just type this in on your calculator and hit enter, you will not miss it. Make sure if you don't have the parentheses though, your calculator will not do it right. To get the right answer, you have to have the parentheses. So negative 4 cubed is a negative 4 times a negative 4 times a negative 4. And dang it, where's my calculator? That is a negative, because a negative times a negative times a negative is a negative, and I think it's 64. 4 times 4 is 16, times 4 is 64. Then you're going to plus a negative 4 squared, so that's negative 4 times negative 4. So plus a negative 16. So negative 80. When you plug negative 4 into G, it gives you a negative 80. That is the answer. Now this one, you're plugging algebra into it. So you're taking this whole thing, the T, the letter, and the number, and you're going to plug it in there. And then you're going to plug it in there. So same thing, where the T was, or the X, or whatever the letter is, replace it with parentheses. So it's going to be F. Instead of the T, put T minus 3 equals a negative 4 times, instead of the T, put T minus 3. Then you've got subtract 3. So this, you've got to distribute. You've got to times both these by a negative 4. So negative 4 times t is a negative 4t, and a negative 4 times a negative 3 is a positive 12. And then a minus 3. And then we've got a negative 4t, and 12 minus 3 is 9. So when you plug into F a t minus 3, this is what you get out. You get a negative 4t plus 9. Okay, now this one, if you're looking at a graph, and you need to find, so this graph is F, you need to find F at a negative 2. So you're going to plug negative 2 into the X, and this is the X right here. So take negative 2 and plug it into the X. So on the X, negative 2 is right here. And it looks like it touches right there. So if you plug a negative 2 into F, it gives you 0 on the Y. So when the X is negative 2, the Y is 0. That's pretty much what we're doing. This is the X, this is the Y. So in for X, you're plugging 0. So when you plug 0 in for X, here's 0 on the X. To touch the line, you have to go up to right there. So the Y looks like it's a little bit more than 1, somewhere between 1 and 2. So it's like 1.25 maybe, something. It's more than 1, but it's less than 2, so it's some kind of fraction, some kind of decimal. Okay, the last one. If you plug 4 in, so come over here at 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Here's 4. Now, where does the line cross at 4? So here's 4 all the way through, and the line crosses, looks like somewhere close to right there. So it looks like if you go over 4, the graph crosses up the Y at 2. So these are your answers: 0, 1.25-ish, and 2. Okay, so this polynomial function, we're looking at the graph. Give me the end behavior. So the left arrow, this guy right here, the left arrow is going, looks like it's going up and left. So as the Y approaches infinity, the X approaches negative infinity. So as Y goes up, X goes left. Okay, the right arrow, this one right here, it goes down and right. So as the Y goes down, or instead of Y, they could put f of x. That's the same thing. So as f of x goes, where are we going? The y is going down, so that's negative infinity. The x approaches positive infinity. Okay, B. Determine whether it represents an odd or an even. Okay, here's what you need. This changes directions once, twice, 3, 4 times. So B, it is degree 5, which would mean it's odd. And odd's always, the arrows go opposite. One goes up, one goes down. So this is degree 5. So that means there are going to be 5 zeros. Here they are. You need to find the real zeros. So the real zeros, there's 1, 2, 3. So there are 3 real zeros, and there's got to be a total of 5, so that means 2 of them are imaginary. 2 imaginary zeros. Okay, this one is a good question, because there's thousands of correct answers. There's not just one right answer. So you got to draw your own polynomial, but it's got to meet this criteria. So this is the y. So the y goes down as the x goes left. So your arrow's got to end up something like this. It's got to be going down and left. Okay, and the y goes down as the x goes right. So your other arrow has got to be down as the x goes to the right. Okay, so here we go. There's going to be 2 real and 2 imaginary, so that means it is degree 4. So 2 real zeros, you could put 1 here, and you could put 1 here. So if it's degree 4, that means it's got to change 3 times. So you could go once, there's 1 change, boom, 2 change, 3 change. You have got to have 1, 2, 3 changes. So it has to be pretty much an M. It has to look like an M. Okay. Given a polynomial and one of its factors, find the other factors. So that's what we just did. That was this problem right here. So we're going to find all 3 factors, and once you find this factor, you're going to factor it down into 2 more factors. So here we go. The polynomial is x cubed minus x squared minus 14x plus 24, and you're dividing that by x plus 4. Okay, so x times what will be x cubed? That's x squared. Now times x squared to x, that's x cubed times x squared to 4. That's 4x squared. And now you gotta minus them. Change the signs. Change that to minus, change that to minus. That's gone. And a minus 1x and a minus 4. You should have minus 5 of them. Bring down the next one. Then what can you times to turn x into a minus 5x squared? Minus 5x. So minus 5x times x is minus 5x squared. Minus 5x times 4 is minus 20x. Now change the signs. Change that to plus, change that to plus. That's gone. And that is 6 x's. Bring down the next, which is plus 24, times this by 6. 6 times x is 6x. 6 times 4 is 24. Minus them. Change that to minus, change that to minus, and 0 is your remainder. So here are your factors. Your factors are x plus 4, which is what they gave us, one of them. And this is the other factor. So it's x plus 4 times x squared minus 5x plus 6. And your final answer, you can factor this down. So what times is to give you 6? Adds to give you a minus 5. So it's got to be x times to give you 6, but adds to give you minus 5 is a minus 2 and a minus 3. Because a negative 2 times negative 3 is positive 6. But a negative 2 plus negative 3 is negative 5. So there we go. Now this bottom question. What would be the remainder? Okay, now all they care about is the remainder. if you divide it by x minus 1. So here's what we're going to do. If you divide, instead of dividing by x minus 1, if all they want is the remainder, I'm going to take into the function, and I am going to plug in, if I'm dividing by x minus 1, I'm just going to plug 1 in. So here we go. I'm going to take 1, I'm going to put it into that x, into that x, and into that x. So it's going to be where the x's are, you got to put parentheses. Have to. Parentheses, instead of the x, put a 1. Cubed minus parentheses 1 squared minus 14 parentheses 1 plus 24. Type that in your calculator, hit enter. So this is 1 cubed is 1 minus 1, so that's 0. So I've got a minus 14 plus 24. So if you divide by x minus 1, your remainder is 10. Okay, if you divide by x plus 3, now I'm going to plug in, if I'm dividing by x plus 3, I'm going to plug in a minus 3. So it's going to be parentheses minus 3 cubed minus parentheses minus 3 parentheses squared minus 14 parentheses minus 3 plus 24. Okay, punch that in. And this is a minus 27 minus 9 minus 14 times a minus 3. That's a plus 42 plus 24. So 42 minus 9 minus 27. You should end up with a remainder of 30. And the last question. Okay, you got two functions. You got p and you got r. Okay, this one they want you to focus on r. So here we go. R at x is equal to 1 plus 3 times x. And they want you, into r, they want you to plug this in, x plus 2. So put that in for that x, and put it in for that x. So it's going to be r, parentheses, take the x out, and put x plus 2, equals 1 plus 3, wherever the x is, put parentheses, x plus 2. Okay, now times these by 3. Times that by 3, times that by 3. So you have 1 plus 3x plus 6. And you can play, the 1 and 6 are like terms, so you should have 3x plus 7. Okay, this one, they want p, so let's grab p. P equals 4x squared minus 3. Okay, I'm going to first do this. I'm going to do two things. I'm going to put a into p. So I'm going to put a into that x and a into that x. So it's going to be p parentheses a parentheses equals 4 parentheses a parentheses squared minus 3. So if nothing really to clean up here. It's just going to be 4a squared. Because the square only goes to the a. Doesn't go to the 4, minus 3. Okay, now after you do that, you've got to times it by a negative 4. So now you got to do a negative 4 times what you just got. So I'm going to times this by a negative 4. So if you times this by a negative 4, you got to distribute it. So you should end up with a negative 16a squared and a negative 4 and negative 3 is a plus 12. That is what you should end up with. After you plug a in, then times it all by 4.